vocal opponents of federal spending, people who have fought very aggressively to lower the tax rate for the wealthiest people in this country, actually took quite a bit of money in the so-called PPP, Paycheck Protection Program, that Congress passed in response to the economic destruction of coronavirus. Now, I bring up people like, let's say, Grover Norquist, because remember, they are taking advantage of essentially a social safety net that was funded by US taxpayers, but was not funded by many of the millionaires and billionaires who have been able to dodge taxes for a long time, thanks to the help of people like Grover Norquist. So let me give you some details that we've learned through various reports, including Forbes. They write that Americans for Tax Reform Foundation, which says it educates taxpayers on the true cost of government and the realities of costly government programs, received between $150,000 and $300,000 in loans. So these are the small business loans that are supposed to encourage small companies to avoid firing their employees. If they avoid firing anyone, these loans will later be forgiven. But I bring this up because Americans for Tax Reform Foundation, I mean, no, let them go, right? Go find other work. These are people who literally work in destroying, the economic stability of this country by giving massive tax handouts to the wealthiest. And then we end up, socializing the failures of companies that haven't paid their fair share of taxes. There's a bunch of other examples. Go ahead, Cenk.
Yeah, so look, I'm gonna give you an awesome quote from Grover Norquist in a second. And we have one organization even better than Americans for Tax Reform that took PPP. But first, let me just clarify. PPP is a good program. And we've explained on the show that the part that it affects small businesses is a rare piece of legislation that is well crafted. Okay, and not only well-intentioned, but well-crafted. What it does is, and I explained this at the very beginning when they were even debating the issue, and then when they passed it, it incentivizes you very well to keep your employees, and it works. So I don't begrudge even significant sized companies in taking it, as long as they use it to keep their employees. So God bless. Like, I'm not in that camp of people, I can't believe somebody took shake and steak and steak and shake, and all those folks took it or whatever. If you're keeping the employees, that's what the whole point was, etc. We'll get to Kanye West later. And then the right wing says like, oh yeah, some progressives took it too. Yeah, progressives think the government can help people. It's the most logical thing in the world to take PPP if you're in that position. Norquist, on the other hand, said that he wanted to shrink government to a size that it was so small that you could drown it in a bathtub. And now you're gonna take government money to keep yourself from drowning? Oh, hell no. No. You didn't argue for all those billionaire tax cuts and tell me about how you want to drown government. And then the minute you're having any kind of troubles, government, please help me, government, please. Yeah.
No, these people are the worst. ATR founder Grover Norquist has criticized one really important part of that stimulus bill, and that was the unemployment insurance provision of the CARES Act, which helps to keep people afloat during this pandemic, average people who have been laid off as a result of the pandemic, which he says delays recovery, and signed a letter urging lawmakers not to approve a second stimulus bill. This is the type of dishonest person that is given like equal credibility on cable news when it comes to debating tax policy or the social safety net or any of that. They never bring up the fact that they're massive hypocrites, that even when they don't need any help from the government, once it's offered to them, they're all for it. Well, by the way, simultaneously fighting other parts of that legislation that of course helps average Americans. And they never disclose that. They just treat Grover Norquist as if there's some sort of like sophistication in his ideology when in reality, the only thing he ever thinks about is how can I pay as little as in taxes as possible, but have the general public, socialize the losses of corporate failures and privatize the gains. That's who Grover Norquist is. But that's not the only right-wing institute or libertarian institute that's in favor of this. So the Ayn Rand Institute, Ayn Rand is a hero for libertarians who want small government. Named for conservative philosopher Ayn Rand, received a loan of between $350,000 and $1 million, which it called partial restitution for government-inflicted losses.
Sure it is, whatever gets you through the night. Hey, it sounds like you're begging for government money. What happened, libertarians? Oh, please, government, give me money. Oh, I'm such an Ubermensch. I'm a Superman. I don't need anybody. I did this with my own bootstraps. Government, please give me money. Please, I'm begging you. By the way, there is some logical sense to it because Ayn Rand herself did the same exact thing. After railing against the government, later in her life, she accepted government handouts and said, "Well, I mean, I want the money." Oh, that's what I thought, Ubermensch. What now?
No, I gotta give you this statement from Harry Binswagner, who's from the Ayn Rand Institute. He says, it would be a terrible injustice for pro-capitalists to step aside and leave the funds to those indifferent or actively hostile to capitalism. The organization will take any relief money offered to us. You guys don't want people to pay into these programs. This is funded by taxpayers, okay? So corporations like Amazon, for instance, which paid $0 in federal taxes last year, thanks to Trump's tax cuts, which by the way, organizations like these absolutely loved and were fighting for. They get to take advantage if they need it of these socialized programs, while again simultaneously fighting back against any part of the legislation, any type of policy that actually benefits people who have worked hard, they have paid their fair share, and deserve to have a social safety net save them when something out of their control, like a pandemic, strikes. Okay, right. And for them to be like, oh no, this money shouldn't go to this socialized program shouldn't benefit people who criticize capitalism. No, it shouldn't benefit you. It shouldn't benefit you. Okay, period.
All right, Harry Bigglesworth or whatever your name is. I went to Wharton. I studied capitalism. I don't remember this section where you beg for government money to quote unquote defend capitalism. That's not really how it works. You either live like a capitalist every day, Cenk, or you don't, okay? And so no part of capitalism says, yeah, the government should give me $1 million so I could write think pieces against government handouts. That's not a thing, and you could do any justification you like, but we all know it's BS. And thank you for proving our point for us. Yes, it turns out the government can help people. It depends on the situation. It depends on what they do. If they craft it right, doesn't mean government is always right. Not anywhere near it. But sometimes government can be really helpful when you need a hand up. And it turns out Ayn Rand needed a hand up. And now she's like, I mean, I'm taking it, but only because of capitalism.
Also, Cenk, one question for you, and this is a genuine question. I'm not trying to be snarky or sarcastic or rhetorical. These are basically lobbying groups, right? These are organizations that lobby government to cut taxes in this case, defund the social safety net, the social programs. So they're usually funded by big donors. That's how they make their money because they don't provide a good or a service. So why are they reliant on government aid in this case when the pandemic really doesn't hurt them in any way? They're continuing to do their lobbying. They will take giant donations from, people with corporate interest groups and all of that, the Koch brothers, people like that. That's how they get funded, and then they funnel that money toward all sorts of lobbying to cut taxes. So like what I'm trying to understand is how exactly did the pandemic hurt them to the point where they're worried about losing their employees due to the virus? It's just complete and utter nonsense. And more context for this story, there are actual small businesses that are owned by minorities that have not been approved for this money that was actually supposed to be set aside for them to some extent. $60 billion of this money was supposed to be set aside specifically for minority-owned businesses. And a lot of these minority-owned businesses have had a difficult time getting approved because the middleman in this case is the bank, right? Big banks get to decide who does and does not qualify for these loans, for these small business loans. And so the same institutionalized issues that we have when it comes to minorities, getting the capital that they need to invest in their businesses certainly plays out in this context as well.
Yeah, so there's a very real and nuanced answer to this, which is that this program was purposely overbroad. So it was to help small businesses, but they also gave it to nonprofits. But when you give it to nonprofits, which most of them do wonderful work, and I'm thrilled that they got it, you can't say, we're gonna give it to nonprofits, but not give it to libertarian jerks who think that there should be no government money at all. You can't make that ideological distinction because the government's actually doing the right thing. They should not make an ideological distinction, even if it goes to giant hypocrites like Americans for Tax Reform and Ayn Rand Institute. So that's why they're getting it. Now, were they actually hurt? It's impossible to know. It's possible that some of those billionaires that fund them took some hits on their businesses. I remember covering the story of one billionaire laughing and saying, "No, I could go 20 years without this affecting my business because I have so much money." I forget that guy's name, but we covered it on the show. But maybe not necessarily for everyone who's donating. So their donations might be off. But I don't want to make laws to do against these groups so that we could be perfectly consistent, because then you'll endanger other great groups that actually do need the money to maintain their staff. So I understand why they were overly broad. Here, I'll give you a super quick example. So for example, like you need to protect people being able to sue their employers. If you say, hey, if it's a frivolous lawsuit, then the person suing has to get the money, has to pay the legal costs of the person that they sued. Well, that would prevent frivolous lawsuits, but it would also prevent real lawsuits because people would be afraid to take on that kind of risk. So some of those laws have real downsides, but they need to be overly broad to have as much protection as possible. That's why PPP is structured that way, and it's correct. These guys, if they were actually principled, should not take the money at all. But obviously they're not principled. Their only principle is greed. So they lived by that and said, gimme, gimme, gimme. I love government money when it comes to me.
And then one final thing that I'll mention is, we've been hearing about a lot of different highly profitable luxury brands, for instance, that qualified for this program, including high-end designers like Oscar de la Renta, Vera Wang. But what about celebrities like Kanye West, who just this week announced some sort of deal with the Gap that would, bring in quite a bit of money? Well, it turns out that his company Yeezy also took some money from this program. Yeezy, an LLC formed by Kanye West and clothing designer, who's also a clothing designer, received a loan between $2 million and $5 million, according to SBA. The company disclosed that it saved 106 jobs because of the program. And look, Cenk, as you know, like we care about saving the jobs. That's the important part of this program. That's what the intention of the program is. It's just interesting to see certain small business owners consistently get rejected for these small business loans, while people who like brag about their wealth on a constant basis, take advantage of it. They get approved for it, and so it is what it is.
I think Yeezy should have been approved. I think, I can't tell if they really did save the 106 jobs, but the point was to save the 106 jobs. And if it did that job, I don't particularly care how rich the owner is. Having said that, the Kanye West and Kim Kardashians of the world are unbearable. After they get that money, then they rub it in our face. I mean, the tweet where Kim Kardashian talked about how their son has 14 luxury horses. I don't even know what they are, designer horses, whatever they are, Kardashian horses. What I don't know. A Frisian. I don't know. Okay. Anyway, that's like, oh, I got government money and I saved some jobs, and then I bought 14 luxury horses. You rub your face in it. I find them to be the most unbearable people on planet Earth. Nonetheless, I don't mind them getting the PPP loans as long as it saves jobs.
When you sign up for a spend and save account at aspiration.com/TYT, we will plant 10 trees. Let's save the planet together.